Complete installation guide for Logistick's Intermodal Wedge XL, the one-way solution for securing light to heavyweight loads in intermodal shipping containers. The Intermodal Wedge XL is a two-part system, including a wedge and a brace. The Intermodal Wedge and Brace are designed to fit either on the peak or in the valley of the container wall. The part installed in the valley will always be adhered first. After loading the cargo, determine the best location for installation. Keep in mind that multiple sets of Intermodal Wedge XL may be needed to safely secure your cargo. Choose an area that will place the wedge closest to the freight and at the same height and position, assuring the beam will be installed parallel to the floor. The beam needs to be as close to the freight as the container ribs will allow, which will help prevent the cargo from starting to shift. The brace will always be on the side of the wedge opposite the freight. The entire application area must be clean and dry to ensure proper installation. Use a dry cloth and, if needed, a scraper and rubbing alcohol to remove loose dirt, dust, condensation, or frost from the application area. Installation of the part in the valley will always be first. If the wedge is in the valley, remove the tape backing from one wedge and adhere it in the valley. Then remove the tape backing from one brace and slide onto the wedge and adhere the brace on the peak opposite the freight. Repeat for the opposite wall, placing it at the same height and position as the first. If the wedge is on the peak, remove the tape backing from one brace and adhere it in the valley. Then remove the tape backing from the wedge and slide onto the brace and adhere the wedge on the peak. Repeat for the opposite wall, placing it at the same height and position as the first. Important: once the Intermodal Wedge XL is installed, it cannot be repositioned. A single 4x4 is recommended for the Intermodal Wedge XL. However, two 2x4s that are the same length and nailed or screwed together can be used as an alternative to the 4x4. It is not recommended to use a single 2x4 with the Intermodal Wedge XL. Measure the inside width of the container at the wedge application area. For example, peak to peak or valley to valley. For proper fit and pressure, the wood beam needs to be on average 1 1/4 inches less than the inside width. For flexible areas, start with the beam 1 inch less than the inside width. When installing on lift points, start with a beam 2 inches less than the inside width. A longer beam creates more outward pressure to maximize performance. Place one end of the 4x4 or two 2x4s oriented horizontally into the pocket of the first intermodal wedge, and rest the opposite end of the beam at the top of the ramp on the second intermodal wedge. Force the beam down the ramp of the second intermodal wedge until it is under the retention clips and locked into place. You may need to force the wall outward to get the beam started on the ramp. If this is too difficult, trim 1/8 of an inch off the end of the beam and reattempt installation. For added strength, drive a 1.5 or 2-inch deck screw through the side of each brace and into the center of the beam, unitizing the system. If necessary, use void filler between the beam and the freight to prevent the freight from starting to shift. Maximum outward pressure equals maximum performance.